And then I'll officially welcome all of us. Thank you so much for taking the time today to join us for what we're so excited, our open project launch party. On behalf of Resolution Systems Institute, I am Heather Fogg. I am the present CEO of RSI, and I'm so glad that you all are here with us today. Thank you so much for making the time. This is a project that I am so excited to be a part of, and I keep using the word pride over and over again. I don't know if I've said this as much in the past months as I've said over years of my life, but this is one really strong example to me of where a project really goes from start to finish by noticing a problem, asking those who are most directly affected by the problem what would help, implementing some of those strategies to see what about that works for people, and then checking in again to make sure that we got it right. And then using that as an example that we can then share that story with others to help shorten future learning curves about how to make communications about online dispute resolution as accessible to folks as possible to encourage its use. So I'm really excited to share with you today the information that we've been learning about and sort of the path that we took to get here. So in setting us up for a good experience, I also just want to offer so much gratitude to the folks that helped to see us to this day. So that includes the American Arbitration Association, International Center for Dispute Resolution, in both the support with funding as well as the support of, they've been amazing champions for recognizing the value of this work and sharing it with others so that they might know that we're here to be able to take advantage of what we're finding. I also want to thank the research team for putting together such an amazing project that from start to finish through all of its phases and to bring us to this day. So I'll turn it over shortly to them. Also to the advisory board who helped us along the way that, Jen, I'll leave that for you and not steal any thunder in making recognition of those folks. And then Susan Yates, our immediate past executive director, who also helped to shepherd this project along. So I'm so excited to be able to turn this over. And without further ado, I don't want to take more time. I want to hand it over to Jen to walk us through our agenda for today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Heather. And bear with me for just 1 second while I share my screen. So I first want to let you know what we're going to be doing today so that you have a certain expectation. I'm going to start with introductions. Heather's sort of started the ball rolling. I'm going to continue with a little bit more detail about all the people who have been involved in this project and all the wonderful help that they gave us along the way. And then I'm going to provide a little bit of background about how this our project gets started, and phase 1 of this project. So this is a 2-phase project. First year, we did focus groups. Second year is what we're going to be talking about today. But I'm going to give background so that it sets the stage for what comes next. And then there is the unveiling. Stephen is going to take over and talk about what we did this year and show us all the models. Then I'm going to ask for a couple of advisory board members to share their thoughts about the project and why they became advisory board members. We will have time for Q&A. So throughout this, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat as we go along. And then at the end, if there is time, we do have a quiz for you about how to communicate with people with low literacy. It's a fun little quiz. And at the end, we have a drawing, and this is very exciting for us. We are going to be offering an hour consultation for anything that you have related to communication for any ADR process. So it doesn't have to be ODR, it could be mediation. So if you have a notice, if you have any kind of PDF documents that you would like us to look over and see how they can be made more SRL friendly. We are happy to help you out. Website, video, anything. So look for that as you leave the Zoom. There will be a survey at the end where you can sign up for that with your email address, and we'll have the drawing tomorrow. So that is the agenda. I want to introduce the staff and everybody else is involved with the project. So first we have Stephen Sullivan. He is our researcher. He took over during phase 2 and ran the project, all the usability testing, visions of the models, writing up the wonderful toolkit. He was the lead on all of that. Then we have Jasmine Henry, who is our research associate, and through both phases has been just really, really instrumental in getting background research, writing up parts of the guide for courts, to providing visuals for us, to reading through everything and giving us good feedback on what we were doing. So wonderful work, both of them. I'm just so pleased with everything that they provided to this project. Then there's Sandy Wiegand, who is our communications and development director, who is also an amazing copy editor, and all of our documents have just benefited so greatly from her expertise in making things sound good. And then I do want to thank Susan and Heather for their guidance throughout this, Susan in the first phase and then Heather in the second phase. Just lots of great advice and getting these things moving forward. And at one point I did want to scream at Susan, no, don't make me do this. But yeah, she just made it so much better. Okay, and then I cannot thank enough our advisory board. They stuck with us for both years, 2 years of helping us out, reviewing protocols, reviewing our models, reading through our lengthy reports and toolkit and guide, and providing such great feedback, filling in gaps in our knowledge, provided us the things that we hadn't thought about. They brought to the fore and just made everything in this project so much better. I really cannot thank you all enough for what you did. And the advisory board is Catherine Alternator, who was the director emerita of the Access to Justice Network, Margaret Wang, who is a former ADR coordinator of the New Hampshire Judicial Branch and is now off doing things that are fulfilling. Teresa Ross, Executive Director of Illinois Legal Aid, Allison Spanner, Director of Access to Justice and Strategic Planning for Illinois Courts, Oladeji TMU, Law Professor at the University of Denver, Nick White, who is the Research and Evaluation Director at the Maryland Mediation and Conflict Resolution Office, otherwise known as MACRO, and Leah Wing, who is Senior Lecturer at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Thank you so much, all of you. Okay, and I also want to thank the foundation for all of their support. So on to our background. Basically, first, I want to make sure that we all know what we're talking about when we're talking about ODR in our context. And what we're talking about is text-based ODR. This is a process where the parties get onto a platform online and they communicate via text. So everything is done on the platform. They're providing their offers, their demands, and communicating back and forth. Sometimes there is a mediator involved who will also communicate by text. And in Ohio, they also offer, through that platform, the ability to do video mediation. So that is what we're talking about. This project started out because Donna Shostowski and I conducted a couple of evaluations of the first ODR programs in the country, some of the first ODR programs in the country. And many of the things that we found 3. One, that these 2 mandatory programs were not being used very as much as they should have been being mandatory. Fewer than half of the parties who were supposed to be using it were using it. We also found that there was poor communication. What in communication there was confusing, and there was not much of it. But also importantly, we found that those who did use it benefited from it. They tended to find it easy to use and convenient. They used it outside of work hours, for example. They also, in Michigan, those who used ODR were more likely to be highly satisfied, to give high ratings for fairness, and to feel that they had control over the outcome than those who didn't use it. So given that ODR wasn't being used nearly as much as it should have been, and there were benefits to those people who used it, we at RSI decided that one way in which we could improve access to justice through ODR was to help courts figure out how to communicate better about it so people felt more comfortable and using it and understood the benefits, et cetera, and would you then be able to use it well. So in phase one, we conducted focus groups where we had people tell us basically what they needed in terms of communication. We explored a whole slew of things aside from that, but it came down to wanting to know what the barriers were to using ODR and how they needed courts to communicate with them. And we found that there were 4 main barriers to people using ODR. One was emotions. And in this case, we're talking about people receiving a notice in the mail or saying that they were a party to a case and that they had to use ODR. And what we found with the focus groups is that they said they were feeling very stressed, very overwhelmed, very frustrated, and that they could not take in everything that they should, all the information that they should from the notice that they received, which was a real notice from a court, was just overwhelming to them. We also found that they didn't automatically trust the notice. They didn't trust the ODR platform. They felt that all of this might have been a scam. They, also didn't trust the process once we got to the point at which they understood what the process was, which brings us to comprehension, which we gave them all the information that they would get from a court before they would register from ODR, which they all read through, they watched videos, they looked at a website, and at the end we asked them what they thought ODR was, and they had no idea it was text-based. They were excited about the idea of not having to go to court, and they were excited about the idea of maybe having a video mediation, but text did not come into it for them. And once we told them it was text, they had a lot of concerns and they pulled away and said that they were not interested for the most part. So those were 3 things that really had to do a lot with communication. Technology, they were concerned about people with low digital literacy, but we also uncovered both during our evaluations of the ODR programs, as well as some during the focus groups, that people a lot of people just use their phone to get on the internet. And so that can also be a barrier because it is more difficult to do many things on your phone than it is to use when you use a computer, and platforms really weren't not made to be as user-friendly as they could on their phone. So we decided when we did phase 2, that we'd have the goals of scaffolding information so that feeling of overwhelm wasn't as intense for people. That if we have a little bit of information and then build more information, that they wouldn't feel as overwhelmed up front and might feel more comfortable moving forward with the process of finding out more. We wanted, of course, increase trust so that they felt more comfortable using ODR. We wanted to demystify the ODR process again, so they felt more comfortable using ODR. The models are phone forward, and what that means is not only that it looks good on a phone, but also that the functionality of our models was geared towards the phone. So no PDFs were involved. Instead, we used interactive web pages that can be easily interacted on with your phone. And we also addressed the concerns that were articulated by the focus group participants, like wanting help. They wanted to be able to find somebody who could help them along the way.
That venue.
And then, so there's help, wanting somebody to monitor their communications. They were concerned about abusive communications or miscommunications. So they wanted somebody like a mediator to monitor them. So we added that into our models. And with that, I am going to send it over to Stephen to pick up where I just left off.
So hi, everyone. I'm Stephen, researcher at RSI. So to pick up where Jen left off, once we identified the barriers that prevented SRLs from using court resources effectively, the next part of Open was to do something about it. So we partnered with an inclusive designer and an accessibility expert to design new court communication models. And so these included a notice document, an explainer video, and an ODR website. And within the website is actually 3 models. So there's a homepage, a self-help guide, and a series of account registration pages. So we conducted 2 rounds of usability testing of the models around the country with folks whose backgrounds were similar to typical self-represented litigants with low literacy and low digital literacy. And so we made pretty major changes to the models as identified by these testers, and also based on feedback from the accessibility evaluation. And through the testing, we found that our models were really effective at addressing the communication barriers that Jen was just talking about. But we also found that it increased the testers' sense of confidence and trust in the process throughout. We would ask them how they felt, and they kind of exhibited much more confidence and trust in the process, but it also allowed the potential benefits of ODR to really shine. So without further ado, we'd like to share the models. So we prepared a short demo video about them, which I will play now. Just share screen. RSI's ODR communication models provide an information flow that defendants can follow from receiving an initial summons to registering for ODR. They include a notice to defendant of mandatory ODR, an ODR website, and an ODR explainer video. We designed the models to address communication barriers that prevent self-represented litigants with low literacy and low digital literacy from using court resources effectively. Our models scaffold information and instructions to make reading and acting on them easier. We conducted usability testing to obtain feedback from real users whose backgrounds resembled typical self-represented litigants. Testers rated the models 4.8 out of 5 for how easy they were to understand. Now, let's go through the models. RSI's Notice to Defendant of Mandatory ODR is the first communication defendants receive about the court's requirement to use ODR. The notice describes the basics of ODR in plain language and provides step-by-step instructions for registering. Usability testers liked that it had a court seal to mark its legitimacy, included a phone number to contact the court, and had a QR code for easy mobile navigation. Testers also demonstrated a clear understanding of what they needed to do next: navigate to the ODR website. The ODR website includes a homepage with an embedded explainer video, a self-help guide to prepare for ODR, and account registration pages. The homepage builds on the information in the notice using the same language to maintain continuity. We provide details about the process with illustrations, which the testers felt enhanced their understanding of ODR. Testers were also pleased to see a dedicated confidentiality section. This information helped to alleviate their concerns about their personal information being compromised online. After navigating to the homepage from the notice, most testers played our ODR explainer video right away. The video summarizes the information about ODR included on the notice and on the rest of the homepage with simple visuals and clear language. Here it is in full.
Welcome to Home County Court's Online Dispute Resolution, also known as ODR. You can use ODR on your smartphone, tablet, or computer, as long as you can connect to the internet. You must use online dispute resolution to try to settle your case instead of or before going to court. Using Home County Court's online dispute resolution, you can exchange messages with the other party, including offers and counteroffers, to try to settle your case. If you do not feel comfortable messaging with the other person in the case on your own, you can request a mediator to help. The mediator is neutral and does not decide your case or represent either of you. The mediator will guide you and the other person through a discussion to help you try to settle your case. If you choose to use a mediator, you will have the option of mediating over a video call or by exchanging messages on the ODR platform. If you come to an agreement using ODR, the Home County Court's ODR program will submit your signed agreement form to the court. If you agree to dismiss your case, you will not need to go to court. If you don't reach an agreement or you agree to continue your case, you will need to attend your new court date. ODR is confidential, so the only information the court will receive is whether or not you came to an agreement. If you do not come to an agreement, no blame will be laid on either side. The court will not get any record of your messages with the other party or the mediator. No matter how your ODR process ends, all of your messages and records will be deleted, except for any agreement you make. This helps keep your information confidential. The ODR system is encrypted to keep your data secure. To start ODR, go to odr.homecountycourt.gov. The first thing you will do is enter your case number to find your case. You will then select your name. You can find your case number in the upper right corner of the first page of the court summons that was mailed or emailed to you. After finding your case, you will create a password. Write down your username and password and keep them in a place where you will be able to easily find them the next time you need to log on. If you have questions about ODR, you can use the resources in the Help Center. Call 555-777-7777 or visit Legal Aid at legalaidkiosk.org.
The user can now start working on their case with our easy-to-use self-help guide for defendants. The guide includes 7 steps for users to follow to prepare for and learn more about ODR. Testers learned that they needed to provide documents and that they had options, such as a payment plan, for repayment. This made them feel more at ease. Now, they're ready to register for ODR. We broke down the registration process into 5 simple steps tracked via a progress bar. Each step has its own page with a discrete task for the user to complete. We help the user to locate and understand important information, such as their case number on their court summons. We also ensured that the pages included definitions of legal terms when those are unavoidable. Once they sign the consent form, the user is ready for ODR. To learn more about how we design the models and how to adapt them, check out our toolkit for making ODR make sense to the public. For more information on how we conducted usability testing, check out our report, Designing a New Way to Communicate About ODR, Usability Testing Insights. The models, the toolkit, and the report are available on our open project website, odr.aboutrsi.org. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jen. Jen, you're on mute.
Thank you, Stephen. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. But in the meantime, I do want to ask Nick to say a few words about being on our advisory board and what these models and this resources mean.
Well, I think I just wanted to share that it's amazing that several years ago, RSI brought some real rigor to research on ODR. This was a lot of spin on ODR, a lot of hype, and I feel like they really sat down and really did some rigorous research. And you identified a crucial issue around public engagement, a reality, a lack thereof of public engagement, that the hype was kind of missing. I want to say it's kind of unlike Kevin Costner in The Field of Dreams. I think the courts found if you build it, they may not come, right? And I think many of us know these tools have a tremendous amount of potential for the public and greater access for the public to justice. It's really important from a court's perspective. And then I love, what you all did at RSI, and you conducted more research that gave practical and actionable insight. And then not only that, you took the next step, advice that courts can implement. I think that's oftentimes where research stops. And so I'm really looking forward, I'm assuming it's public now, to share these reports in Maryland. I think when I was reading them, I was like, yes, this makes sense. This is things we need to be doing. So I just want to thank everyone at RSI and the wonderful research team that took years of doing this. You make it look easy. I know it's not easy, but you made it look easy. And so I think the end product is something that's going to be really valuable for the courts. I hope that folks in the legal community, law schools, will share this with their students, say, here's something to think about. And I think this is a valuable tool. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. And you were part of making these tools make sense. Really, really appreciated your insights on all of it. So thank you. Leah, you also said you wanted to make some comments.
Thank you. It was really an honor to be part of this project at a distance as one of the members of the advisory board from the beginning. And I will just say, I think you have celebrated the groundbreaking work that you have done. So I want to uplift that and highlight that for me, it's crucial that we connect research, intellectual thought and engagement directly to practice and ethics, and how to operationalize and connect the two. And you have role modeled doing that in ways that are practicable. You've done it not just to give us a research project that we can look to that shows us findings, but to create tools that can be immediately implemented. And also you make clear in your materials that you're available to provide some guidance about how people can tailor it to their own particular setting, their own particular context in court. The other thing is, I think far too often, the approach both to research and specifically to research on technology is to talk about checking in with users and getting user feedback. But again, I would say often the mainstream approach is to look at people in the majority so that we can serve the majority. And you have broken the mold here too and led the way by looking at some populations that are particularly underserved, particularly vulnerable, and have particular significant inaccessibility and barrier issues. And to use that as the baseline for collecting data, for hearing about the human experience, for what the needs are, and then building framework, both for communication and also for, again, the practical connection with the courts, for the courts to make changes in order to eliminate those barriers. I really think this is role modeling that is around ODR and the courts, but also for quality research methodology. So I'm just so impressed, and I'm excited to help you roll this out and get just as Nick said, get other courts and other researchers paying attention to this. So thank you for all the work that you did, RSI leadership and researchers.
Thank you so much, Leah, for all of your help and all of your insights. I think we learned, we took a lot from what you've done with iCoder. For those of you who don't know, Leah was instrumental in developing the standards behind ODR that have gone international, I believe, Leah. So if you want to find out more about the ethics of ODR and what standards courts should be upholding, you can go to iCoder, ICDR, ODR standards. If you Google that, you will find it. But I used a lot of that in terms of thinking about what should be in our models and what we should be communicating to parties, and particularly things around making sure that they could provide informed consent, for example, to using ODR if ODR is not mandatory, or making sure that they understood the benefits and the risks, and that they understood what was confidential and what was not confidential. That all really came from Leah and her work. So thank you, Leah. I don't know if anybody's got some. Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Go to those standards. They're wonderful. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, any comments, anything else they'd like to ask about. If not, we can shoot you over to a quiz.
Can I ask a quick question? So
Sure.
I also just want to say wonderful work, and and I apologize, I missed the approximately first 15 minutes of this. So if you already covered it, I apologize for asking this question. Can you talk a little bit about what you're planning to do in terms of getting the word out to courts and to academics? Are you hoping that people that are on this will help facilitate that, or is there a particular plan of action that you'd like to make us aware of?
Sure. We already done a number of things to sort of make people aware of it. We've written articles about our project. Sandy has been incredible in getting the word out through LinkedIn and through email blasts. Certainly, if anybody on here wants to get the word out and you want our help in getting the word out, let us know. We have done plenty of presentations to we did it to the Access to Justice Network, which used to be the Self-Represented Litigant Network, ABA, people's classes. Yeah, so we're doing all sorts of presentations on it, writing about it. And our funders, the American Arbitration Association, ICDR Foundation, I'm not going to do that. They have been doing a great job of publicizing it as well. It's everywhere with them. They're on podcasts, on their social media. They're just in love with this project and getting the word out. So we'll be continuing to reach out. This is not a project that's ending. It's a project that's continuing.
So can ask a follow-up, which is maybe in the chat, would it be possible to provide a link to any sort of resource that you'd like us to have immediate access to that we could then forward to our contacts, so that if there's anyone who happens not to have seen one of those podcasts or LinkedIn things or gone to a session, we can help to play our part in making people aware of this?
Sure. We have a whole website dedicated to it, cool. Which is now in the chat. If you want to go to that, it's not acting like a link because I think I have to put the HTTPS in front of it. But yeah, odr.aboutrsi.org. Put that in your search bar and it will take you directly to our open website, which has all of our resources, explains more about our project. Yeah, and it looks really good too. We had a really good designer for that. So the other place you can, I can follow up with all of you because we have your email addresses and I'll send you all sorts of like, here's the podcast, here's, yeah, because I don't know right off the bat. Yep. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts? I'm gonna leave you with a thought. And this is something I'm going to be talking about before we get to our quiz. I'm going to be talking about this at the ABA Dispute Resolution Conference. But my thought is this. Trust is at the center of everything. And trust begins with communication. So what you want to do as a court, as an organization, anyone who's trying to get somebody to use an unfamiliar process is to communicate with care, making people feel like you want to help them rather than they're on the outside looking in, which is often what people feel like when they go to court. You want to be completely transparent about what the process is, and that isn't just telling them what the process is, but telling them in a way in which they understand. I mean, if they don't understand it, it doesn't matter how much you talk, it's going to be completely opaque. You want to be reliable, which means setting expectations and living up to those expectations. So telling them what they're going to get, and then they get that. And then finally, making sure that they know that if they were to use this process, they could have a good outcome, so that you are competent in helping them through this process. Those 4 elements will get you very far. That is my little yep about trust and how communicating at the outset can mean so much to opening access to justice. So, Jazz, do you want to get us started with our quiz?
Sure thing. I will go ahead and get that started. I also want to apologize in advance if my audio dips low. I'm having issues with my Zoom audio, so that's what that is. But we're going to go ahead and work through some quiz questions. So these are questions about what might be the best tools or methods to communicate with SRLs. It's not graded, so don't worry too much, but we will take it question by question and then discuss the answers for each question. So it's going to be within the Zoom app. So if you're on your phone or your computer, it should go ahead and pop up. So we'll start with the first question. You should see it on your screen now, but it's going to ask you to pick the best heading for a notice of ODR. And once everyone has selected the answers they think it might be, I'll go ahead and share the answers with everyone. And then, like I said, we can discuss. Okay, great. I see we're about 80% of us have completed the question. Here we go. We're up to 85. All right. Last answers. Send in your last answers before I'm going to hit the buzzer. And then we can discuss. We actually have a tie right now for first place. So I'm going to go ahead and end it. And then I'm going to share the results. So the correct answer for this one, what is the best heading for a notice of ODR, is actually the first answer. Answer A, which is how should I prepare for ODR ? So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about headings. There are 3 different types of headings that you typically use when you're communicating to people. The first is going to be a question heading. You also have statement headings, and then you have topic headings. Now, question headings, which is what's in answer number A, answer letter A, those are the best option when communicating with SRLs, because a lot of the times you know what questions are in their head. So if you ask the question that they are looking for, then they can easily find the answer to their question. Generally, question headings are written in sentence case, just like a normal sentence, because it's easier to read than if you capitalize every other word or every word. If you can't do a question heading, if you're not sure what question your reader or user has, the next best choice is going to be a statement header, because the statement header provides some context for the text below. And answer option B is an example of a statement header. 1 or 2 word headers, such as answer options C and D, are topic headings. They're not the best. We don't advise that you use them. They're typically too vague and they can lead to confusion with your users. Additionally, just for good measure, option D is not going to be a great answer. I know a lot of us, I've done it before, are kind of used to using caps as a way to differentiate a header. When communicating with SRLs, that is not recommended. It comes across as yelling. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I don't think you guys could see the correct answer before, but now you can. So now I know. So now we'll do the next question, unless anyone has any questions about that first quiz question. All right, hearing none, I'll go ahead and go into question 2. So this one is going to ask, what is the best visual to accompany text about signing an agreement? Photo A, photo B, photo C, or photo D? And these questions are intentionally tricky. So if you're feeling like we're trying to trick you, we kind of are. All right, we're at 84% of us have completed this quiz. So I'm going to give you guys a couple more seconds if you want to get any more answers in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end it, and I'm going to actually share the answers with you guys this time. So the correct answer for this question is D. D is the best visual to accompany text about signing an agreement. I'm honestly not sure if you guys can see it, but I can see on my end that about 76% of us answered that the A photo was the best option, which is, that's a good option. However, when you're including visuals and communications with SRLs, you really want to keep your visuals as basic as possible. You don't want to introduce any additional details that could distract your user from the core of the idea that you're trying to communicate. So D is the best because it is very minimal. It doesn't have any extra text. It doesn't have any extra colors. It also includes, because it is colorless, it has a lot of white space. And adding white space to your communications is a good way of increasing the readability for SRLs. For these reasons, B and C are not great options. They are photos, they have a lot of extra details, and they could pull the user's focus from what is really important. And then just another broader thing about visuals is you want to make sure to include visuals to highlight important topics. So don't include a visual if it's not as important of a topic, because that could pull focus from your more important topics. So that's the one on visuals. If anyone has any questions about that, please feel free to speak up or put it in the chat. Otherwise, we will head to the next question. All right. And so this question is asking which of the options below should you use when drafting materials for SRLs? I'll give you guys a little bit extra for this one because it has a lot of options. As you can see, we were being especially tricky with this one because you've got the A and B, all of the above, none of the above. And a lot of what's covered in these questions is reinforced in a lot of what we found in phase 2 and put into our phase 2 models. And then you can read a lot about like these, I don't want to use the word rules, but these guidelines and stuff from our worksheet from phase 1 and all of that great stuff. So we're about 90. Oh, hello. Did you want to say something, Lisa?
No, I didn't realize you could hear me. Sorry.
All good. It happens with technology. Okay, looks like we are 94% participated, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you guys. So the correct answer here is E, all of the above. These are all good options, good tools for us to use when drafting communication materials for SRLs. So using an active voice is a great tool because it allows you to speak directly to your users. For example, instead of saying parties are required to register for ODR within 14 days, you might say you must register for ODR within 14 days. That's an example of active voice, and it's it's a better way to communicate. Another great way to communicate is using positive language. It's more direct than negative language, and it's therefore easier to understand than sentences phrased in negative terms. Research also shows that people respond more to those positive goals rather than the negative goals. So for example, instead of saying, if you don't register for ODR within 14 days, you cannot participate, you would say, you must register within 14 days to participate in ODR. So again, framing it in a positive light lets them see the positive goal and work towards it. And also, repeating words and phrases are a great tool to increase accessibility for SRLs. I know a lot of us were taught professionally, academically, to pull out a thesaurus, vary your language, but that is not helpful when trying to communicate a complex idea. So it is very helpful if the terms that you're using stay consistent. So try and use the same words and phrases rather than synonyms, because using different words for the same concept can be confusing to readers with low literacy. So for example, instead of saying, before you begin ODR, find all the documents you will need, save a copy of these papers on your computer, you would say, before you begin ODR, find all the documents you need, save a copy of these documents on your computer. So just keeping that phrasing consistent is going to be helpful. So we were kind of tricky. You're not wrong if you chose A, you're not wrong if you chose B, C, or D, but you are the most right if you chose E. And if anyone has any questions or comments about that, again, please feel free to pipe up, but otherwise I will take us into our last quiz question. All right, so this last question is going to ask which of the following is a good method for providing information on web pages? And Jen did speak a little bit to this as well when she was talking about our website being mobile first, hint, hint. or about 68% of us have filled out the poll, so I'll give us a little bit more time. Just as a reminder, this isn't graded. Feel free to answer however you would like. It has no effect on your entry in the drawing later. So, all right, we're about 84% participated. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results with you guys. There we go. So a good method for providing information on web pages. The correct answer is none of the above, which is surprising, right? A and B, those sound like good options. Let's talk about why they might not be great options. So it's not recommended to have a bunch of links, a list of links on one page. That can lead to something called link surfing, where especially with low literacy, low digital literacy individuals, they can open up those different links and just kind of jump from web page to web page without really absorbing the information on any specific web page. When using links, you should also make sure that the link names are explicit and meaningful. You have to give the context to where you're taking your users. So don't use stuff like click here or read more, because that doesn't really describe where you're taking your user to. Search boxes also seem like a great way to help SRLs navigate the website. However, research shows that users with low literacy will actually avoid using the search box. Or when they do use it, stuff might be misspelled and they won't actually be able to effectively search, or they won't know the terms for the thing that they're looking for, which again prevents them from effectively using the search box. So it's really not recommended to use the search box. And additionally, search boxes can have issues if they are not accessible to people who use voice to text options to navigate web pages. Additionally, you should avoid filling the entirety or both sides of your web page with important information. Research shows that people with low literacy and low digital literacy tend to scan just one side of the page. They read in sort of an F-shaped, capital F-shaped reading pattern. So it's more helpful to keep information on the left side of the page, and you can leave the right side open. That gives you white space, which again contributes to readability for low literacy. Or you can also use it to add visuals like we were talking about earlier, or helpful organizational tools. And then the last thing that isn't super helpful for communicating with SRLs is providing information via a downloadable PDF. You want to avoid doing that because not everyone can view PDFs. If they're on their phone, they might not be able to open it. They might not be able to download it and revisit it later. They're just difficult to handle sometimes. They also typically include a separate link, so they take you away from the core of the website. So it's just much better to embed that information on your website, especially if it's really important information. That just makes it a lot more accessible to your users. All right, so thank you so much for doing this quiz with me. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back to Jen.
Thanks, Jazz. That was really, really fun. So I want to thank everyone who has who came and listened to us, and hopefully you learned something that you can take back to your court, your organization, whatever your role is. As you leave and exit, please remember to fill out, if you want an hour of our time, to fill out our survey and give us your email address so that we can put you into our drawing. And if you want us to contact you, you can also put your email address in there and we will get in contact with you. So thank you again. It's been wonderful having you. And if anyone has any questions that you want to stay back for, we can answer your questions.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you can see why this is a project that I am just, pride is just all I feel every time I think about the Open Project and the people who have contributed to making this happen. So thank you so much for joining us and taking a look together at what we've had to offer. And we hope that we'll hear from you soon so that we can also work together to implement this in as many places as we can. Because in my belief, if we've made it simpler for anyone, we've made it simpler for everyone. So I'd love to see that spread far and wide.